We're going. That's it. It's pretty easy. Everyone, welcome to Marketeers Clubhouse. Today I got a very good friend of mine, Lyndon Cormack. Lynn, when did this is part of a test and part checking my memory? When did we first meet? Do you know the exact day and pretty much the conversation we had? Because I know it.
Yeah, I definitely don't know the exact day, but I
Do you
would
know the
assume
location?
like 14 years old, and you were just in a new business called Moose Mountain Cycles and Sport. And yeah, I was just a young, enthusiastic kid who was trying to figure out this whole bike scene, which, at that point in time was small. I mean, it was a small business. I mean, this is predates Rock Shocks, to put a timeline on it. But yeah, no, that's when I met you, and you were very, very passionate about the sport, and so was I. And you were very accomplished at the sport, and I wasn't. And yeah, I think
You were 14, dude. Like, you're not going to be accomplished quite yet. Of course, I was. For everyone who was out there, I was already at 14. I was definitely good. Do you remember why and how you started talking to me? Because I was reflecting on this yesterday.
Well, I actually don't remember. I assumed I would probably been interested in getting into mountain bike racing.
Uh-uh. You were in there because you were in, and I'm going to get it wrong. I get the name wrong. Young Entrepreneurs or
Oh yeah, EY or no, yeah, what it was called. Yeah, what
it
was it
was
called?
Young Entrepreneurs. I'm positive your dad put you in it. And
Yeah,
so first off to that organization, if it still exists, congratulations, because well, young
isn't that funny?
entrepreneur turned into a fairly prolific entrepreneur. Good work there. But you'd come in and you were just this little guy. You were like a young man, and skinny, and like you were so energetic. And you came in, you're like talking about mountain bikes, and you're like, I'm in this group. I'm learning about mountain bikes, and I want a mountain bike. And I want to learn about this. And you were just like peppering me with questions through this, and I had no position to answer those questions. I was like older than you, but not like by a ton. I think I would have maybe been 19 or 20 um, at the time, maybe a tiny bit older. No, 19. And you were you were unbelievable. And instantly, I was like, this young guy is really, really fun. Like, he's a really fun guy. And you just kept coming back and asking questions week after week after week. And this was not we were close to the train line in Calgary, so it was easy for you to get to us. But you were endlessly entertaining, super enthusiastic, beyond any level of enthusiasm that I'd ever seen. And you were smart as hell. And I could see it right away. And so me and the donkeys, inside joke, um, adopted you and started taking you mountain biking. I don't know how or what first mountain bike you got. I don't even like that part. I don't remember. But I know that we became an odd couple of
Yeah.
friends where I was a little older. I was already at that point, I was racing pro for Marin bikes and owned part of a retail store that was tiny and sort of terrible. But it was cool. We were learning, and we were all young men that were doing it at the time. Um, and we just started hanging out, and you would come mountain biking. And I was used to, if anybody's not in the bike racing world, older riders end up mentoring's the wrong word, but end up exposed to younger riders all the time. You end up in the same group. It's not like hockey where it's always the same age groups out on the ice all the time. Young, old, all kind of mixed together. It was not unheard of. Like I had at the time, I would have had a few friends that were in their 50s. And they were just my 50-year-old friends, and we'd go biking together, and it was amazing. Still to this day, I've got a bunch of really young friends that are in their late 20s, early 30s, because I still mountain bike, and there's still these people out there, and they just end up being really good friends because of this thing. And so it wasn't a weird thing in the bike world that we became friends, but we did. And then I met your whole family real quick, because I'm sure your family thought it was odd. And they're like, you're hanging out with what? And so I ended up meeting Gordon Sue, your parents, and they instantly welcomed me. Your brothers, Jason and Jamie, became friends of mine in their own separate worlds from you. And I ended up becoming a real good friend with your whole family. And it's something that I absolutely love still to this day. In fact, your mom was the only person who was upset at me when me and my wife Harper went away and eloped to Mexico. We had a party afterwards, and Gordon Sue obviously came because they're important to me. And your mom pulls me aside. She goes, "Is your mom upset with you for going away and doing this?" And I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Well, I am." And I just started laughing. I'm like, "But we're okay, Susan." And she's like, "No, I know. I just would have really appreciated the heads up and to have been
My
there."
mom,
And
my mom likes a good wedding, that's for sure.
oh, she loves a good
So
wedding. And
just
so,
to correct you, I need to correct you in some of your facts, so I'll forget.
oh
But
boy.
first of all, the as we were chatting, it was actually that group which I have not thought about in years, but it is a really great group. It's called Junior Achievement (JA).
JA. Thank you.
So that's so the first of all, it's called JA, and it was really interesting. It's a program that they had, whether it was 13 or 14-year-old kids, and we had to work with a group and create a brand, and not only bring an idea to life. But we also had to learn a bit about accounting. We learned how to go and sell this to somebody. We had to go and create this actual idea and bring something to life and actually make a physical product. And to be honest, I have not thought about that in years. Um, Second mistake you've made was I actually think, and still to this day, that the Moose Mountain Cycle and Sport was actually a really special place. It wasn't a crappy little bike shop. It had a very, the ownership of the donkeys and yourself was interesting because obviously you were the mountain bike guy, but they also owned a body shop. And so the fact that, early customizations of bike stuff, like you guys are
Hmm.
painting your own frames and creating
Hmm.
like, I would also, it's almost like what the world's into now, scarcity products or having something that others didn't have, whether it was like a custom painted helmet, like an airbrush helmet or an airbrush bike or uh, all of those things. And, I think it was, if you welcome, a 14-year-old stringy, I was fit because I was always run. I was an out of school
Hmm.
track. So I had fitness always in my blood, but it was like you welcomed, these kids into the clubhouse and, and made us fall in love with more of a sport and this idea of a sport. So I think it was a really special place, to be honest. And I don't know if how many of those places exist. They exist for sure, but it's such a bigger sport now than it used to be, and so much more involved. And bikes are actually so much more expensive. Like all of those things, which is probably a bit of a barrier, to be honest. But yeah, no. And I was younger than you, and I would sort of you sort of took me under your arm, which was lovely. So thank you. And I think that I always had my parents' credit card that I was allowed to carry. Especially, they always were very very supportive of me in doing sport. I mean, if
Hmm.
this was like trying to go tour around because I wanted to go explore places, this would have been like, well, good luck, on
Yeah.
your own. But like they were very very supportive of travel and sport and getting out there and at this point in time racing and showing up at bigger events. And so I could pay for gas and I could pay for hotels. I couldn't pay for a car. I didn't have that, but I could pay for the stuff that was probably a good co-pilot to getting us to places where we wanted to go. And I think there was
And
a
you were.
mutually beneficial friendship there where we both got something out of a deal. And of course it has grown into a lifelong friendship, which is amazing.
Yeah, the thing I remember most is just my friend. And you're right. I do remember that credit card coming out a bunch. And thanks, Gordon Sue. That was great.
No,
But honestly, all sort of jokes aside, it's been a long time, and it was amazing. And we we all know, obviously, you, Jamie, and Jason, and your family are the founders of Herschel, this amazing um, fashion brand as it's turned into. Um, but and that story's been told so many times. I don't necessarily want to focus on that. I've been really obsessed. I actually had this week I'm making season 2 of Marketeers Clubhouse, and the first person I did was Calon Baden, who, Lyndon, I don't know if you'd know Calon, but you'd know of him. He was the architect who turned into the head of design at Oakley, who then turned into the head of design and CEO of Oakley through the legitimate heyday of it. And he is a really, really interesting guy. And I wasn't really concerned in talking with Calon. I want to talk to him about design because I'm super into design. Wasn't really worried about talking about the CEO-ness of his world. I was really interested in the story of like how he met Jim and this crazy interaction. It's the same kind of thing as, the Jim Gennard story at Oakley. Like, as you would know, Lyndon, he started, making grips and selling grips out of the back of his car when he was a motorcycle rep. And, the Nike story is famous and they make movies about it. I'm interested in that part because I was heavily involved. How many years ago was Start of Herschel? Give me that date.
Look, for 13 years. We registered the brand in November in 2009. So first time in March in 2010.
Okay. So I literally shared an office with your brother for years. Me and Jamie have a hilarious, very more challenged relationship. We are always consistently challenging against each other in all sorts of ways, where you and I don't have that dynamic. We're more like not aggressively challenging each other, which Jamie and I absolutely did in everything that we touched. So, but I got to see Jamie starting this. When you guys started this, so fall way back, we grew up together in the mountain bike world. I ended up doing some bicycle design stuff. I then ended up running a snowboard shop called The Source. In that period, you were traveling and doing a whole bunch of different things. You ended up in a bicycle retail position in a small city outside of Calgary, working with friends of mine. You and I were constantly in contact, even though you were only 100 kilometers away. We didn't see each other a ton. Like, we'd go on bike rides and stuff, but less than we saw of each other. Jamie was in town. Jamie was working at The Source with me, the snowboard store in Calgary, and I was offered an opportunity through a longtime sponsor, Oakley, to become an agent. I became an agent. James stayed at The Source. I tortured him the last day I was there, when I was still his boss. I was the worst human ever to your brother, making him clean the garbages and just like, I was a nightmare. And James, I'm sorry. I was a nightmare. I was young and stupid. But I love him. And so we went through that. I got called, I don't know, about 8 months into my Oakley repping, and I was killing it. Instantly was making a ton of money and became the best territory for Oakley, and we were killing it. I got called from Ride Snowboards. And I don't know if you know this story 100%. I got a call from Ride. They said, we'd like to meet with you. I'm like, sure. So we met him at one of the coffee shops in Calgary. And they're like, hey, a guy named Peter from this retailer gave us your number. We're looking for a new rep. We know you do Oakley. We were wondering if you want to do something bigger and better. And I'm like, nah, actually, I think I'm good. Oakley has been great to me. Here's a number for one of my very, very good friends. He's your guy. And it was James' number. And that is where your brother went to. I instantly knew who they should have. It wasn't even a question.
Does your brand need some help in the trade marketing department? Manage your sales tools with Regulator's easy-to-use features. Whether it's fixtures or displays, POP, custom art or promo products, you can submit single or bulk orders for all your locations within minutes, using a simple, streamlined process. Deliver content, manage your budget and view the market, all from the palm of your hand. Move up to 10 times faster than your competitors and capture all the opportunities that put your brand on top. Visit brandregulator.com for more information.
You at that time, I think, had probably already moved. You moved to Vancouver. and you were working in an agency there. Was that correct?
So so right after high school, I moved to Australia, and I spent a couple of years in Australia.
You got me my first pair of Bluntstones, by the way. I'll never forget that.
I like Flintstones.
Yep.
They're a great food. Uh, it's funny when you talk about Flintstones and just like the ubiquitous nature of them nowadays, but just my love for classic brands and the fact that Blundstone boot stands the test of time, which I sort of would have recognized back then when I was 18 years old in Australia. And still the brand's very relevant today. Well, quite honestly, more relevant than it was back then. But for the Herschel aspect of this is like it's sort of the desire of loving those classic brands. So I lived in Australia back then. Nowadays it's a little different. I mean, just to I actually like getting old, and I get to grow up with my kids getting older and all those fun things as well. But I didn't have an email address. I certainly, this predates email addresses basically when I lived there, and also, so not a lot of kids would go over there. I mean, it was a big deal when you were 18 years old, and I just flew across the world by myself, didn't know anybody, and just started to figure out life. I thought had lots of dough. But I had like $700 or something like that in my bank account. I had a bike. At that point in time, I actually had a mountain cycle, San Andreas, so very, very unique bike, kind of like very, very unique bike at that point in time. Full disc brakes, full suspension. It was kind of ahead of its time. It was an awesome bike. I think it was probably too ahead of its time, to be honest. Some of the things didn't work as well as they probably would have as they fixed them in the future. But you'd need innovators out there doing new things to change the world. But so I went there, got a job in a bike shop. You could only get a 1-year work visa. Now you can get 2-year work visas. But I actually came back. I did move to Canmore when I came back, and worked in the back of the Bicycle Cafe, which is in the back of a Chinese food restaurant at that point in time.
Shout out Big Bry.
Shout out, yeah, our friend Big Bry. And it was Brian figured out pretty quickly that they probably had the confidence of a 28-year-old, but I was only 19. And I was like, well, I don't fix bikes. I don't touch anything in relation to actually how these things work. I'm actually not good at that. I'm still not good at that stuff. I don't know how to fix stuff. When something breaks, I'm like, it's a disaster for me. I'm just not good at that stuff. But I said, I'm really good at selling bikes, and I'm really good at selling stuff. And so he, and I also, I guess maybe once I proved I was really good at selling stuff, I sort of, that confidence came in, and I was always, working on side deals with them. Well, if we can get the business to this amount and I'm the only salesperson, I want to be bonused on that. I want to be like, create something that makes it worth me showing up and working overtime and doing everything we can to make this business awesome, which it was an awesome business, and very small at that point in time, but growing and profitable. And so anyways, yeah, I did that. And then I moved back to Australia. And one of the cool stories about me moving back to Australia is I saved up every penny I had to go there. And that's a little bit of a lie, because my parents gave me that old station wagon. It was a 1986 Chevrolet Eurosport wagon, and which was great because I could travel around to, whether it's snowboard competitions or bike races, both, the snowboarding connection for you and I is very strong as well, obviously. But I sold it, and that's really where I sort of got my money for my plane ticket. But I had to sell a car to go to Australia, and it's, these are big deal. And this is 1994, Lyndon, and so I ended up coming back, working at the Bicycle Cafe in Canmore with our friend Big Bry, and then I got a call. Again, keep in mind Australia, Southern Hemisphere, so the seasons are opposite. And I was living in Melbourne, Australia, so you do actually get seasons in Melbourne. It's not just hot all the time. That's not California. So, but then I got a call from my boss in Melbourne saying, I need you back. And he offered to buy my plane ticket back to Australia to go work for him for another year. So that was pretty cool, right? I mean, I worked so hard I worked really hard to get there because I had to save money. Keep in mind, I went 14 days after my 18th birthday. I moved to Australia, so I was really just newly 18. So trying to go to school and make money, and like I didn't have like a very great job. I was working bike shops, and which was great, but I didn't make any money doing it. So yeah, to get a plane ticket back to Australia was like I was so stoked. And yeah, so I came back again, worked in Canmore again for Brian, had an awesome time. We moved the shop outside the back of a Chinese food restaurant across the street. I think Brian would be happy to know that because we did it ourselves, I think we renovated the store for $20 a foot. So that's pretty awesome economics there. So we just did it ourselves. And all these stories are fun stories that seem very personal, and maybe people don't get them. But what I think it did was my surroundings and how I acted and who I interacted with. Ultimately, whether I was knowing it or not, entrepreneurs were happening all around me, and ideas were being brought to life all around me. My friend Big Bry opening his own shop. You and I really stoked on that. You developing along with James Klassen, Virtual Pivot Point, which I don't know if you remember that. One of the meetings you had with James was at Canada Olympic Park. I think that's what it's still called in Calgary. Is that what it's called?
It is, yeah.
At Olympic Park, and we were cross country skiing actually. So I used to go snowboarding in the half pipe, and then meet you to go cross country skiing. We used to work out at that Olympic training
Bob
center.
Niven, yep.
Yeah, we used to work out there a little bit in the off season for mountain biking off season, snowboarding on season. But we used to, skate ski there. And I remember with you, James, and I there, and you're actually drawing stuff out in the snow. And this was working, of course, VPP, which ultimately became Outland. The first bike to use Virtual Pivot Point. And but I was actually learning about how this bike was going to work because you guys were drawing out, problems and problem solving in the snow. Now, going back to what I previously said, I'm not good at building stuff, but what I again was very, very tuned into was, you were problem solving and you were coming up with the why, right? You were like, this is why we need this because it's solving a problem. And so if you imagine that, like you imagine being around snowboard shops where people are, David Mark starting, their own business, Ken Achenbach starting the snowboard shop, Brian Cook starting Bicycle Cafe. You're starting and creating a new suspension system for mountain biking. In snowboarding, you saw all the local brands, whether it be like call it Option or even Iguana, things like that, Yuki Nimaki. All of those sorts of brands were happening. And so you don't know it because it's very organic. It's happening amongst your friend group, but people are just starting stuff, right? And I think that's a very unique position to be in, where I don't think that everybody gets this sort of upbringing of just surrounding yourself around these idea creators. And I think that you always knew it was possible. So
that's super interesting, Lynn, because I was thinking about this the other day. The soup that we were swimming around in Calgary in that time period in the early 90s was super unique because we had all these emerging, like snowboarding was like just starting to shoot through the roof. And we were like constantly evolved in that world. The mountain bike world was just starting to become a real thing where bikes were actually starting to be real and people were getting paid money to do it as a sport. It was just this thing. But we were in this mix of insane innovators and people that were just like, we can do it. And I remember, and I said this on my Colin Bain podcast, I was constantly fascinated with the story. I knew the story of Nike, but I didn't really care. But the story of Oakley fascinated me. It was just this guy, and he was a sales agent, and he was driving around in his car, and he was selling motocross grips. It was amazing. And then it just sort of bloomed into this thing. And I remember being at a training camp in California and going to Oakley to get a whole bunch of new product and going into it wasn't the new amazing Oakley building after they went public. It was just their original warehouse building, but my mind was blown. They were in like what to me seemed like millions of square feet. I'm sure it was only 30,000 square feet, but it was just like this insanely large operation with lots of people, and this business was going on. I'm like, wow, This all came from one guy's idea. And both you and I had been in the world where, Sims Snowboard was a guy. Burton Snowboards was a guy. Barfoot is literally Chuck. Like, we knew these were all things that were like not foreign to us. It's like, you got a good idea, start a company and you could be the next Burton. You got a good idea, you start a company, you be the next, Oakley. It literally didn't even sure, why not? Like, why not? Why not? But prospectively looking back at it, that is so rare. Like, the amount of people that I know that came out of Calgary at this period that are in such high functioning positions right now, let's not forget at all, Lululemon came out of the same bucket.
Yeah.
That was West Beach Snowboards. I've talked to him 30 times trying to buy a product. Like, he's same group. It's crazy. We weren't best friends with him, but it literally was the exact same group. So there's this inordinate amount of I don't even know what to call it, but grit to start a business and move through. And because we were seeing it happen all around us, it was happening in Southern California as well, but it wasn't happening everywhere, where you just sort of start a business and this thing would sort of grow and wow, it's a thing. But it's a different, I don't know. It was a really weird, different group of people.
I don't think I mean, I was always a pretty hyper kid, so I don't know if I thought much serious about anything. But yeah, I think again, I'm using the word organic, which might not be the right defining word for this, but the reality is it was just happening. I mean, so I don't know. I didn't reflect. I mean, it's easier to reflect on things when you're at this stage, but it's I think it was just happening, and so I don't think I ever was like, oh, I could do that too. I don't remember thinking things like that. Mind you, I probably did, to be honest.
Oh my God, dude. I heard you say I can do something constantly. That was literally what you were. And your brother was just I remember Jamie Cormack, I'm going to be a cartoon artist. I'm going to be this. There was a new Jamie at every corner. I'm going to be a Pro Patrol. I'm like, bro, can you please pick a thing? And no, I'm going to go and be the best. And he went and did it, and he would do it, and he was really good at it. It was amazing. That group we were in, and specifically your family, your brother, Jason, is a very, very good businessman, super accomplished. Your dad, Gord, is a very good businessman, super accomplished. And these weren't businesses where they came in and acted as a VP. These were businesses that they grew. These were things where it took grit, and you were just sitting in the middle of this same pocket of humans.
I'm going to interrupt you because I'll forget to say this because my mind's a little shot in my old age here. But but it's quite funny because I've actually never, again, it's always nice to talk these things out because you're not my therapist, by the way, but I don't know if you.
I am the closest thing to being your lifelong therapist that you've ever had, so I'm going to actually say
quite
I
interesting, which I've actually never have said this ever, and it's because I just came to the realization that it's true. But actually, my dad was an entrepreneur. He started an oil company.
No shit, dude. Who are you? He was building companies and selling companies.
I was always just when I was asked with my dad, I was just like, oh, he had a small junior oil and gas company, which is what he had. But yes. my mom also owned a daycare with 110 kids, so I guess she was an entrepreneur too. It's funny if you go back a few years though, because my dad was certainly working his way through oil and gas business, running companies, eventually being presidents or CEOs of companies, and then ultimately he went out on his own and started his own thing. But my mom was a school teacher, and I've actually heard a lot about a lot of entrepreneurs in general. One of their parents have been teachers. It's been quite common out there.
Barry Calon, head of the English department at St. Mary's High.
But again, there's a big connection there of maybe it's just the DNA of desire to teach another generation, or or something there in relation to the spirit of teachers, of like their desire to teach. Again, I don't desire to be a teacher. Like, it's not in me, but the fact that, my mom and desired to educate. And eventually she got really into the spirit of just early education. So like preschool, kindergarten, that was really where she had the most amount of joy with these younger kids. And then, having a daycare, which, to be honest, I think her daycare was a good experience, not her favorite experience of her life. Like, it was, I don't think she was probably better as an educator versus a daycare. I think that she won accolades alongside her business partner, who was named Erica. They won a lot of awards for being the best, privately run facility in what they did, which was really great. But I think that it was hard on her. I think she took it too personally all the time, and I don't think she enjoyed it. I think my dad probably really enjoyed it, and obviously was successful and ended up selling his business at one point in time, and becoming a full-time grandpa, which I think he really is especially proud of. Is certainly one of his biggest accomplishments, along, of course, with my mom. But I think he's turned himself into, and she's turned themselves into, just being such awesome grandparents, and very supportive.
Well, they're amazing people, and they have been for a long time. Your dad has done tons for me, tons. He's helped. He's given my wife references. I think he was the third reference on her application to go to law school, and it was a no-brainer. Like, I actually asked Harper this morning. I'm like, was that Gord who was the third reference? And she's like, I don't remember, but she's like, I think so, maybe. And of course it was. He's super accomplished. Everyone knew him. Everyone liked him. He's like a very honest, gritty, hardworking person, which was great.
I like my parents, like your parents, were just very awesome, nice people. We
down to earth.
We drew the lucky ones. So
and they would let us endlessly fool around. Where it was amazing. They gave us tons of rope. We didn't hang ourselves, although many times we got really close to hanging ourselves with the rope that are of freedom that they'd given us. Okay, so you have this. We have a common path, a common background, a common thing. You guys start Herschel. There's a real clear point in time where I know your brother is working on technical backpacks and like pulling patents and doing some fairly specific things right at the start. You guys roll in through your first trade shows, and I was paying attention, but I wasn't really paying attention. It felt like a stick of dynamite blew up, and there was Herschel, and I was like, what just happened? And I'm really interested because we get tons of people watching this, and there's lessons to be learned in all these stories. First lesson, kids: single person can make as much impact, or if not more impact, than a giant group or a large corporation. Original ideas come from original people. Go, try, do your best. It's where Taylor Swift comes from. It's where Oakley came from. It's where Nike came from. It's where Herschel came from. Do it. Go try. And if you try, there's these like inflection points. For me with VPP, the inflection point was, I remember calling you somewhere through my VPP trade shows because I was fighting with James and the managing CEO. I remember calling you from Vegas at one point and almost being in tears and just being like, dude, I can't stand these. This is a nightmare. It was, I think the next day, it was the end of the trade show and I was getting ready to come home. And this tall, skinny guy comes in the booth last 5 minutes of the show. And he's like, I'd like you to explain this bike to me. I explain it to him. He goes, I don't believe you. And I go, here, let me show it to you. And I prove it to him with this simple test. And I could just see like this, like, and his eyes lit up. And turns out that was Leonard Zinn, who at the time was the editor of Bicycle Magazine. And he was just like, can I ride this thing? I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Go. It's the end of the show. Go ride it around the trade show. I don't care. And he came back and he's like, we got a whole lot to talk about. And that was the turning point. That single interaction, there was like, I know it so clear. Super, super clear. That was it. There's a point somewhere where Herschel had gone in. Did you guys go in going, we're going to be a fashion brand? I know at the time you were an agent working for brands. James was an agent working for brands. All the brands that you guys worked for adopted you really quickly. They go, these guys are smart. It happened independently. Jane was sucked into the sort of R&D stuff at Ride. You were very involved in the brands that you were working with at more of a level of just, I'm a salesman in a big territory.
We're not here for the high rollers, snooty wine critics, or long-haul collectors, but we do think it's about time wine cellars turned into swoon-worthy works of art. Our experienced designers will bring your dream wine cellar to life, fitting any sized space and aesthetic requirements in your home. Our craftsmen carefully hand-build your cellar to give you a wine storage space that really feels like you. Visit themoderncellar.com for more information.
When you started your own stuff, did you guys go in thinking we're a fashion company, or did you go in thinking we're a backpack company and there was an inflection point where it was like, holy crap, it's this fashion thing that is the ticket? What was like, it was like, and it was you at the trade shows. I know it was you selling it. So there's a point. Do you remember, or do you know what that was?
Yeah, I mean, for sure I do. And it was Jamie and I selling. I mean, sometimes for some of them, it was definitely both of us at that point in time. Generally, as it evolved, I spent more time on the front lines, certainly than Jamie in the early years. But yeah, I mean, there was only two of us for a number of years, so we didn't have a whole bunch of other people to pick on to come. So I mean, so I was working for Vans, basically. So, pretty well-known brand, obviously. So, and I had been working for Vans, well, at the start, probably for around 8 years at that point in time. I bootstrapped, as did Jamie, the brand. So we had our jobs on our agencies on the side. So as we were starting, so that sort of kept the lights on. It allowed us to not take salaries from Herschel or need money. We had jobs and reasonably good. I would consider the territory I had for Vans and what the brand was doing at the time.
Fantastic plan B. Fantastic plan B.
It was really great. The brand was awesome. I learned a lot and loved my time there. And the people I got to work with. So I was always a fashion kid. Like I was always into sport, but fashion and or lifestyle or whatever you call it. Fashion's always a tricky word for people to put their finger on it. What does that actually mean? But I was into brands. I was into new ideas. I was into, I didn't have to be exactly cookie cutter to what everybody else was doing. And I had probably herd mentality, but the reality is I was probably a little bit on the outside of it, of just trying to start the next herd. And so when we look at bags in general, and again, in a lot of the sports that we did, mainly snowboarding, and which I'm still very, very active in snowboarding now, but they involve technical equipment. And I think the fact that you really appreciate product in general, and when it worked really well, whether I designed it or not, wasn't the point. But when it worked really well, you noticed. Or when there was a feature that worked really well, you cared. And when we looked at the outdoor space in general, whether there was more technical outdoors like North Face, Patagonia, or Terex, that kind of business, or even, some of the brands that were a bit more, action sports focused, they were pretty good brands. To be honest, there wasn't a lot there. I don't think there was a lot. There wasn't a problem to solve. I felt there was a group of people solving problems pretty well, to be honest.
Well, and for people that don't know, at the time in that world, Dakine, Burton, REI, Mountain Equipment Co-op, and a handful of others owned the backpack game. And they
were doing a great job, and I would say they deserve to, because they were doing a really, really great job. Yeah. And then if you flip to fashion for a second, real fashion, like so let's go back to the action sports and the outdoor business. They were really important products, and I'm here giving those people kudos because it was deserved. They were great products, right? And again, there isn't much to, maybe you could offer a different point of view, but that's about all you could offer, in my opinion. But when you went to luxury, you'd have like the Hermes or the Louis Vuitton or those sorts of brands being the most important part of their business. Like Louis Vuitton started as a travel brand. Yep. Hermes, the Birkin bag or the Kelly bag or things like that were like world famous for a bag. And I would say back for the luxury business, footwear and accessories or bags were the heartbeat of all of those brands' business. To get a new hit record in a handbag made companies back then.
Totally.
And so if we put that on the outdoor on one side, luxury on the other side, and then you look at the middle, it was a boring, boring, boring space. So I tend
Sorry, Lynn,
to
when you say the middle, you're saying virtually
bags.
fashion. Yeah, I know in bags, but you're including fashion and economics in that same thing. Something that's not a $10,000 bag, something that's not a super technical snowboardy thing that is affordable, but like fashion and everything in the pocket. It's all one.
Yeah, I mean just the bag business. I think whether they're utilitarian backpacks or simple duffel bags or what have you, just bags. And so then if you drew a parallel, what was I doing at the time? I was working for Vans, and we were selling $50 to $100 basically. I mean, we sold other things other than canvas sneakers, but we were basically selling that. But we had a heartbeat, we had a lifestyle. We were selling counterculture, and we were selling California and the skate scene, the surf scene, the snow scene. We were selling something, and there's a heartbeat there. And it wasn't just Vans, wasn't just about selling the skateboarders. They'd be a tiny little business. But we were like, how do we add a heartbeat to a category, infusing our design sensibilities, infusing, a little bit of fashion into it, but also have a utilitarian product that just works. And Jamie at the time was doing, working on lots of things, but he had spent a lot of time, as you mentioned earlier, as in Pro Patrol or Avalanche Control and all these sort of things. And one of the things that guides did back then is everybody knows, people who are in sales know about features, advantage, benefits, but all these brands would just add so much bloody features and another strap and something else for some salesperson to talk about. And real guides just cut that stuff off. Like, it's like, when you don't use it, it gets cut away. And so we really wanted a pared down design. We wanted to be not luxury on purpose, because we wanted people to just be able to use these products and use them like they would maybe a typical action sports or outdoor product, but in cities and moving around from A to B. And so that's really where we thought we could solve the problem of really taking this very generic utilitarian category without a lot of heroes, like the sneaker business, which is a very similar prices to us, at Vans and Nike and Converse and Adidas and Clarks and you name it, New Balance, Asics, all, we used to, even back in the day, we used to, you and I and others would try to get New Balance from Europe because we wanted those 574 colors you could only get in Europe. Or working in the snowboard industry, we got to meet all these rad, like, Japanese kids who'd come over to live in Banff or Lake Louise and
bring us watches and treats all the time.
Shocks and sneakers or what have you. We both had big feet, so we were a little hard in the sneaker game, but because there wasn't a lot of the sizing. But anyways, we wanted to put a heartbeat in this thing, and I think we were exposed to the world, and we thought we could do it. And so, going back to what you said a few minutes ago, where you're like, kids go out there and try. I agree. I 100% wholeheartedly agree with that. I think the advice I would give to my younger self was, I probably had too big of an ego, and I was afraid of failure. I was afraid of, like, phoning somebody and saying, like, it didn't work out, versus, like, thinking that I'm going to give it my all. And I should have reverse engineered an excuse of why something wasn't going to work. And you're like, hey, listen, as an example, hey, listen, this idea I have might be a little progressive. It might not be the right time for this, but I have this inclination that this could really work. So I'm going to go try it. And if it works, then fucking awesome. And if it doesn't, then that's okay. At least I'll learn something along the way. And that's my older self talking to my younger self, of going, like, I was so afraid of failure. And it wasn't like I let failure take over and beat success. And on the flip side of I have this story I tell my kids sometime, or I've told them a few times, but and my mom, who's listening, will, and my dad, of course, but my mom probably a little bit more on this one will know this. But I probably from the Japanese connection that we all had from snowboarding. Not a lot of Japanese guys in biking back then, but snowboarding for sure. We, I was really into vintage Levi's. I was really into vintage Wranglers. There was another funny Canadian brand called Fancy Ass Denim for girls, which I thought was interesting. And so I was going, and I'd spend like all my money buying vintage denim, and I'd go to like, which by the way, Alberta, you know, ranch country, like people wear denim because it's what you wear. It's not like it wasn't a fad; it was a function almost from a rancher and style point of view. You know, it is called Cowtown. You know, so we had a lot of Wrangler, a lot of Levi's, and a lot of really good finds actually. And so I wanted to start this denim shop. You know, I wanted to sell like new stuff and vintage jeans, and I had hundreds of pairs of denim I bought. And then, of course, I'm a little attention deficit, so I'm running around doing other things and moving around and doing this and that. But I'm really, really glad. Also, this is like completely a contradiction to everything I just said previous to this. I'm really glad I didn't start that shop because I actually think it might have worked. And I don't know what my life would have been like as thinking big as an 18-year-old. And maybe I would have turned it into a global chain. I have no idea. Who knows, right? But I think I needed to learn more. And I think I didn't go to university. I didn't do any extracurricular. I haven't sat in a classroom except I did give I've been a keynote speaker at the Sauder School of Business at UBC and also in University of Victoria. I've keynote speak there. I'm like, just please don't ask me where I went to school. Please don't ask me where I went to school. But I literally haven't been in a classroom since I've been 17 years old, aside from some of those speaking engagements. But I needed to learn stuff. You know, I needed to learn stuff, and it would have been the wrong decision at 19 or 20 for me to maybe start. Maybe it would have been the right decision. I'm glad I didn't start it. I guess so. As much as I didn't start it because I was afraid of failure, so that was the reason. But I'm glad I didn't start it.
From brand development to simple market executions, 54 Blue helps brands of all sizes grow with sustainability in mind. Their full stack range of services include print, fabrication, design, web, interactive, content marketing, brand consulting, creative strategy, and more. Join some of the world's largest brands and lean on 54 Blue for your next go-to-market. Visit 54blue.com for more information.
It would have been a success, Lynn. I have zero doubt about it. You're destined for that. And for anyone who out there who's watching this is younger, I was a terrible student, barely got through university or barely got through high school. In fact, on my LinkedIn, I just post that I went to Ridgemount High, which is amazing, from Fast Times at Ridgemount High, because I have zero real education. I got 3/4 of a Bachelor of Science, Lynn, and you know this part of the story. When I started VPP, I went back to university and I did well because I actually was trying to figure out how to do it. I was taking physics and all these things, trying to figure out the problem. When I realized that that wasn't the path for me, I got the hell out and just went and focused full time with James on actually just solving the problem. And we figured it out literally within about a month. Like, it happened instantly. I knew exactly what the bike needed to be. James knew how levers worked, and it was just a perfect combination of, I need this. And he was like, okay, well, we can do it this way. And it just was kind of a thing. It happened real fast. It wasn't magic. You would have been a success with, I have zero doubt. Come from the grittiest family of business people that I know. If you don't think so, you're wrong. You do.
No, I do. I just don't know. I don't know if I would have been a success, but I don't think that whether, success is a hard thing to put your arms around and say, what is success, right? And I think I was much more successful going through the trials and tribulations of my life. And I learned so much. And if I wouldn't have I would have had different interactions. I mean, hindsight's 2020, but I learned so much from so many incredible people I got to work with throughout the years. I learned I learned who was bad as well, which was always good. I learned who wasn't good at their job just as much as I knew people who were great at their job. And
it's 100%.
Again, I maybe I would have bought it and sold it and did the same thing. I have no idea what I've done, but like I say, obviously it's easy to reflect in hindsight.
Yeah, in an alternate universe, I'm sure that Lyndon is the king of denim. And you bring up ego, and this is something I've actually been tinkering with for about, I don't know, last few years. I had an exceedingly healthy ego, still do. Your ego, exceedingly healthy. I know that. I know you really well. And that's one of the reasons we got along well. Jamie, 100%. All these hyper effective people I know, it is a thing. And when you're young, you're super high on ego, super low on wisdom. And as I get older, I watch myself, I can reflect back and go, when I've lost components of ego, when I see it erode, it leaves really fertile ground for wisdom to form. And we're in a unique spot where we're in a more reflective age. My parents wouldn't look back and think about their ego in these things more philosophic than not at this point, where we kind of have the luxury to do that. We have that at our fingertips. And you brought it up, like when I look back, the most like ego is what got us to where we were because we had these things to do it. Sometimes ego destroyed relationships. Sometimes ego put me in bad decisions. Ego is why both elbows are worn out and I've had surgery on one of them. It's why one of my knees is wrecked. It's why I got scars all over my body. Those were decisions made against ego. Like, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. And it was just this thing because we had this drive. And I know you have that same drive. It exists every time you get on a bike. It exists every time you go snowboarding. It's there. I see that sort of like fertile ground where wisdom can start forming. We can actually like, I hear it in you, and I hope people hear it in me, is I can actually start eroding bits and pieces of my ego that I don't need now, because I'm confident, and I'm either confident enough in what I do, or I just don't care if people think a certain way about me. But that gives me this big area where I can put in this sort of wisdom and start forming bigger, better thoughts. In talking with you, I hear that in you. Do you, like, you've had so many experiences. We just like, let's just talk even in the last 14 years with Herschel. Are you a different person today than you were when you started it? As far as like, if you can reflect back and go, wow, I can admit to mistakes better. I wish I could have done that earlier. You sort of referenced that already. Like, what advice can you give to someone from your perspective where it's like, hey, let go of this and it lets you move forward 10x? Like, that's a thing that I'm really interested in, that, because it seems to be a very real thing, like super real.
Yeah, I think it's funny with a lot of entrepreneurs in general. And I guess trying to break this into a couple parts here, but a lot of entrepreneurs or people talking with entrepreneurs are looking from what you've learned from your failures, right? And it's important that as much as we win lots, we lose lots as well. I always say we win a hell of a lot more than we lose, which is important for success and momentum and things continually moving forward. But I also, when I'm asked or when I hear other people talk about their failures, I listen clearly because I'm really interested, and that's why so many people ask the question about them. What things did you have to overcome, and all of these things, which I think is really important to ultimately, do what I do for a living. I find that I've made mistakes in my life or have lost because of something I've done, and it's always been a part of my life, which is it's quite interesting because I always go like, why don't I have the perfect answer for this? I'm like, I consider myself a decent public speaker. I can articulate words. I'm not afraid of. I don't have a nervous system to be able to talk with people, but I feel like in my entire life I've sort of been set up with constantly losing, and then you just try to get better. And there's so many, like the death by the thousand cuts. I'm not dead yet by any means, but it's like in bike races. Let's go back to the bike racing days. I don't know if you remember this, but we were at the Nationals in Penticton, and my front tire blew off my bike, pulled my brakes. I flip over, I cracked ribs. not important other side bit on that, but I also suffer from hay fever. We went back to my cabin and I had allergies, so I'd sneeze and it felt like I died about 20,000 times.
Yeah.
But I fell because I was trying really hard. And sometimes you win, like, and I'd go and win stuff. I'm like, oh, this is pretty awesome. But certainly my age, like junior back then. But same thing with snowboarding. If you don't land a trick, you don't win the contest, right? So I feel like, you got to go back out there and do that trick over and over and over again. So I think I've just inherently built into understanding that you lose all the time, and I don't reflect on it. Like, what's the sense? Go and cry yourself to sleep. Like, just fix it. Try to fix it the next time you made a mistake or something happened. And to be honest, some of those things are catastrophic. I mean, those are cracked ribs and broken bones or stitches on I get stitches all over myself from mistakes I've made. So I don't ever have one thing, and we haven't had one thing that's gone wrong. We've had lots of things that have gone wrong, and we don't reflect on them. We just build off them, and we expect things to go wrong. It's almost like I'm not perfect. I'm not Michael Phelps, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. I'm like, I don't have perfection, or Usain Bolt, or choose another athlete. The other part of the question, I have this saying I say quite often, which is how do I get out of my own way? And I find that I get stuck in my own way so often, and I'm the person that I'm running into in order to solve a problem or move something forward. And it's not really maybe stuck in my own way, but I'm in my own way. I've got maybe too much knowledge about a certain thing that I'm too like. I always say that's like thinking in megapixels. I'm thinking in all these little pixels that ultimately make up the picture. I'm like, I need to sometimes think about the picture more than the megapixel. So I'm trying consciously when I'm faced with a tricky decision or where to go next, or how do I affect, whether people or business with positive change. I try to make sure I pull back a little bit and make sure I'm getting out of my own way and I'm not allowing myself to make the right decision. So I don't know if it completely answers your question, but I think that quite often people will be their biggest obstacle to anything, whether it's a good decision or a good decision, whether it's life or business or family or what have you, or or very, very, just critical decisions in your life, or even small decisions. Just like, how do I make sure, like, I pull back a little bit and figure out if I'm the obstacle that needs to be, navigated in order to continue to move ideas forward. So get out of your own way as much as you can in life, and you're going to find people around you are really, really intelligent. Maybe they don't have the same painted picture, but providing it's bloody close, they might be your helping hand to get stuff over a finish line. And I think I spend a lot of time doing that now, knowing I am a true jack of all trades. I think I don't know what people would say I'm the best at, unfortunately probably selling stuff. It's not always my favorite characteristic of mine, that I'm really good at selling stuff.
What you're best at is never your favorite, dude. That's life. Really.
So, I think there's, having a bunch of smart people, knowing that those people are there to help, and they can ultimately help a lot more than you're going to be able to do things yourself, is important.
Yeah, I think that's huge, dude. And I think, everyone can do a really good job of getting out of their own way. I do find that people don't, it's impossible. There is, past is irrelevant. It's just it's nothing. Future literally doesn't exist. We can't predict what's going to happen. My next word is a surprise. We're only in the exact moment we're in, and the decisions we make in that time period are really, really important. And as quick as you can curate wisdom in your own world, I believe that is one of the biggest things you can do. It's funny, the military, they take young men and women that have nothing but large egos and fit bodies. They take them and they break them. And then they retrain them and instill training, which is a precursor to the wisdom of how they're going to act in field. It's a systematic approach to breaking these people down. That's why tons of people want to hire ex-military to put into their companies, because they come in regimented and wise. And it's a really interesting approach on humanity. The rest of the world doesn't necessarily do that. Colleges, universities kind of try to do that. You and I are definitively really far out of that world. We somehow found our way through that. But I always tell my sort of younger friends, I'm like, pay attention to the little decisions, because you never know which little decision is going to turn into a huge thing. Herschel was a tiny decision that you and Jamie and Jason made at one point. It was like there was a decision to have a conversation about it one day around a table or whatever you guys were doing, and it turned into something that definitively changed your life. And it was a really important thing. It was at the time, the very inception of it was tiny. Like for me, I believe it was that same Penticton race. I got second nationals. I dropped the mic. I was it. I'm done. I'm retiring. I think I had one more race after that. We went to NORAMs or something, I think, after we were.
I had broken ribs, so you went to NORAMs.
I went to NORAMs.
That was at Roslyn.
Yeah, remember I crashed in Mount St. Anne before. I had a broken shoulder.
You always had something broken.
Something was always broken. But at that point, I kept breaking I was racing for GT. The bikes kept breaking constantly. In fact, I raced NORAMs with a broken bike because they couldn't get me a bike in time. So I just raced a broken bike. But I made a decision right there. I'm like, I'm going to fix bikes. Right? Like, these things suck. I'm going to make a better version. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out, because I got a bunch of ideas. It was like a throwaway dumb thing that literally happened on the podium. I was like, I probably could have won this if I was on a better bike. I'm going to make a better bike. That was it. And
you have to solve, and you're
solve the problem and just be, do that. But it takes a lot to erode ego and the correct parts of ego. I need a healthy ego. Even today, you need a healthy ego today to get into tomorrow to make the decisions. But the bad parts of that ego are the things that I see in you have eroded, and hopefully people have eroded in me. The misbehaving young youth, the belligerent, whatever, the idiotic
days,
and we don't. I don't deny them, and I love them, and some days I still do it. You could put a few drinks in me, that can come out, and it's fun, and I love it.
You did not, one thing about you, which changed my sort of adolescence. So especially certainly in Alberta, you can drink at 18, but you never drank, actually.
Not until I was 28. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as again, you used the word and then said it's not the correct word because we were friends, not mentors, but like that is mentoring at that point in time. Like, I didn't drink, right? Like, friends were out partying and this and that, and I didn't drink. I drank. Unfortunately, I changed habits. So I do, but that's it. Anyways, one thing you said earlier, it was interesting because it's something. It's actually my favorite definition in the world. And I don't know if people have favorite definitions, but you said, I know it's one of those things. I'm like, sorry, I've said this before, and someone's actually like, sorry, you have a favorite definition? I'm like, I have a favorite definition. And my favorite definition is the definition of the word future, which you just mentioned. And the definition of future is quite simply everything that is yet to come. Mm-hmm. And I latch on to that definition. And I love it because it allows me and the people that I surround myself with to talk about the future and what we believe it should become. Mm-hmm. and the ideas that we create, the conversations we have, the decisions we make, ultimately are future forward or future focused decisions. And I love that definition. And I don't even know where I looked it up one day, but I was just like, everything that is yet to come. I'm like, it's poetic in its own.
Fairly sure I taught you that when you were really young, Lynn. So you can just attribute that to me.
Yeah, I think it was you actually. Now that I come full circle on that, is everybody? I don't know if everybody know. I mean, because not everybody that knows you or listens to you or all these things know what VPP was. And again, I'm a salesman, not an engineer, but quite simply, the way I always described it to people, and so and to just go full circle on this, virtual pivot point was acquired by Santa Cruz, and I took care of one of Santa Cruz's most important territories in the world, being British Columbia and North Shore and all that sort of stuff. But for maybe 7 years of my life, again, unbelievable experience working with unbelievable people and an unbelievable brand. So
Yep.
very very fortunate that I got to have those experiences in my life rather than being in a denim shop, which I love denim, by the way. But basically, so full suspension bikes back in the day, as you pedaled, it basically allowed the shock to move it, but it basically took away from all the energy you were throwing into your pedals, which if you think about a standard road bike, the more energy you put into your pedals or wattage, you're going to go faster. Pretty simple stuff. Well, what VPP allowed that to do is you could put as much pedal pressure down into your pedals so that energy went straight into the wattage of pushing your crankset around. But then the suspension system worked at the same time. So it was independent linkage that allowed that to happen. And so with all the smart engineers and the complexity of that system, that's what it was. And for those of you who didn't grow up in the bike business or came in later, the fact is bikes didn't used to do that. And the fact that we could be throwing as much energy now through our bottom bracket, and so to Jamie's earlier thing about the right bike could have won on the race. The other guy didn't have that too. Sorry to let you know. But the reality is, it solved a problem, and a real problem about energy transfer while still allowing a bike to be reactive in the back end. Now, from one of the inventors of the technology to someone who has just been around it for a little bit, I hope I did a decent job explaining what the problem you were solving was.
It was perfect. Yeah, we were always trying, like, when people ask what it is, I say it's just a beautiful balance in the world of chaos. We're taking the forces that all exist around this whole operational thing, and we put a beautiful balance. And if you've ever seen a mountain bike in slow motion go down a trail, it's chaotic. It's insane. And if I could say, well, there's a couple things. I'm going to go to one of the other ones in a second. But how do I say this right? One, VP is a great thing. It's not the greatest thing in mountain bikes that have ever happened. That's the one-by drivetrain, which actually kind of makes VPP less relevant because it controls the forces a little bit. But when back in that time, Lynn, remember how simple things were. Everyone was trying to go simple, 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 simple. And I looked at the issue with James, and we both were like, well, why don't we just make this more complicated? And I said, that's a really interesting point. He goes, we can just make it complicated and make it work. And I'm like, okay, I'm good with that as long as we can make this thing structured correctly so it doesn't blow up on the trail. When you pull apart a Swiss watch, it's really complicated. A sundial, however, is very simple. It's one piece. A Swiss watch is hundreds and hundreds of pieces if you've ever had a chance to look inside one. The Swiss watch is more convenient, truly functions better, travels better. It's more accurate to the milliseconds, but it's hyper complicated. But they've got themselves to a point where it was actually good, and it was these things could last and travel and be quite resilient. We knew that was just the reality of it. If anyone asked what we built, we just turned a super simple a sundial into a Swiss watch. Does like it. We're just bold enough and stupid enough to go, let's just make it more complicated. I have tons of ideas that come to me, and there's thousands of them nonstop. I'm really plugged in, whatever you want to call it. I call it many people call it the Akashic record. What's out there will be discovered sooner or later. Someone would have come up with the technology Oakley used. Someone would have come up with VPP sooner or later. I'm the one who plucked it out of the ether and just turned it into something. I'm just kind of more in tune with that. And I'm boldly stupid with a massive ego that was like, why can't I do it? That being said, it did work. and it was pretty good. It's 30 years later, and I've got I go out to the local trails and I love mountain biking still. And I see literally hundreds of them every day. They're all over the place. Like all
Must
these
feel
little,
good.
yeah, all these little things. Well, Lyndon,
Yeah.
you can't see something on TV if you're watching TV now and not see a glimpse of a Herschel backpack. It's impossible. I see
Yeah,
it everywhere.
it feels good. I mean, I do like that. I think that's that's okay. It feels good. I of course I love
Oh,
it,
it's more
but
than okay. It's almost the best part. Money is
it's fun.
great. It's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah,
It's
it's fun.
amazing.
Yeah, you're trying to you put yourself out there in the world with an idea, and people decided they liked your idea. So it's constant recognition of. To be honest, I mean, it's constant recognition of a whole bunch of hard work too. I mean, this didn't come easy for us or for anybody who's done this before us in relation to different things. So yeah, I mean, it's that's the fun part, and I think there's people out there who have create a nicer product who never had commercial success, right? I mean, there's people out there that have done amazing things, and again, everybody defines success differently, as I said earlier. But yeah, we found commercial success with an idea, and it's pretty empowering. It's fun. I like it.
It's beyond empowering. It's beautiful. And
Yeah, it's
and
fun.
and I've said it to you personally and privately. I'll say it in front of everyone. I'm super proud of you and James and Jason, and obviously your parents. You guys are a big part of my life. I am blessed to have such talented friends in my world all over the place. Dude, thank you for one being a very good friend for many, many years. Thanks for being fearless and doing what, and this goes to James too. Thanks for being fearless and doing what you wanted to do. Like Lynn, lots of people would have said this is a dumb idea. Many people did. And if didn't, they were whispering it until they saw the success. I've seen that on my side. It's not pleasant, but you were fearless. You've evolved into a really great businessman, and your wisdom is growing every day. Keep it up. I'm super happy to know you, and I'm very proud to be your friend. So thank you for that. Thank you also for the time you gave me and our listeners today. I hope people learn a bunch of stuff. Kids, adults, it never ends. By the way, Lynn, I smashed a finger so bad years ago I had to stop playing guitar. So just
You probably weren't very good at it anyhow.
no, I was terrible. But just
You might have got better if you were able to do it more. So
yeah, 2 months ago though, I decided I wrecked an elbow and I built a tennis court out at my place a year ago. So I had to learn how to switch playing tennis from right to left. So I've been doing that all summer, which I thought was going to be impossible, but I've got a ball machine and I'm about 6,000 balls into hitting left, and I am capable. So another 6,000 and I'll be competitive. So I decided that I was going to learn how to play guitar left-handed. So I started doing that about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and I am better left-handed than I was right-handed already, which is great. And so don't be afraid to try things, folks. Go out and do it. There's nothing to stop you from doing it. It won't be a success right away. It may never be a success, but you might find joy and happiness in these things, which in the end is probably one of the most important things. LC, love you, buddy. Thank you for your time. Don't be a stranger. People go buy Herschel. It's a great product. Like Lyndon says, it solves problems. It's effective. It's made of quality. And honestly, they don't wear out. I don't know how you guys are going to keep selling more and more of those backpacks. Those things last forever, which is great.
Hopefully the world keeps on growing. So there's, I can't remember the new stat, but I think there's 7.8 billion people on Earth. So we got a lot of people. We got lots of people to introduce ourselves to and teach them about the brand and what I go close on this as well. And so first of all, thank you. From the early years to now to convincing my parents to get me things. I remember if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have got the RS1 Rock Shocks, but it was actually literally really hard to ride without them. But things. You were always a very, very important part in my teenage years. One of the most important parts of my life, and you learn a lot there. I talk about Herschel being 13 years old right now, and so maybe we met when I was 14, and look, what maybe I've evolved into, or what this brand has become. But I always, with the Herschel family, I always say we're a brace faced up, awkward 13-year-old right now, and we have to look at ourselves like that, because we need to learn, innovate, and not be afraid to change into the future, to evolve into what will be almost for the rest of our lives. So I think we're at a very, very important time and junction of our brand now, to continue to learn, and not be afraid of trying new things, and win some, you lose some. But it's an exciting time, and it's I like these platforms that you've created, because I do want to give back. And I mean, this is it's an hour and a half of my life. It's not a huge give back. And of course we give back in other ways, but it's the younger version of myself would listen to things like these, which didn't exist back then. And you would try to learn so you could make your own decisions and create your own path. So thanks for also you investing the time and energy in making these things a reality.
Yeah, I'm happy. And FYI, you're the only kid I know that read Vogue magazine at
Cover to cover.
17, 16, cover to cover. You're the only kid I knew that knew the names of all the supermodels, men and women.
Well, the men's one too.
You knew them all. You were
why.
amazing. You kept me fashion relevant when I was a fashion Luddite. You were,
So true.
yeah, like you were literally, that's what when you came back from Australia, you're like, I got you Bluntstones, and now I need you to think open-minded, Jamie, quote unquote, were the first words you said. And you were like, these things are great. And FYI,
well, they are great. They were kind of outbacky, like blue collar Australian boots, but God, they were good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? God, they are good. I mean, and this is too many shout outs to Blundstone. I'm gonna get a hit up for a collaboration here, which we'd love to do, by the way. But anyways.
Yeah, and you also came back. You gave me in the same box. You gave me a pair of Bluntstones, and do you remember what else was in there? And it wasn't in North America at the time. There was 2 cans of Red Bull.
Oh yeah, from Thailand or something.
Yeah,
I came home through Thailand.
Yeah, something like that. And you were like ADD higher than me, and I was ADD, and you were like a next level ADD kid, and
not good.
And you were just like, these things are super fantastic. You got to give one of these a try. And I looked at it, and I looked at you, and you were like, go, 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 go. And I'm like, ooh, this looks like rocket fuel. And it was, and it was successful. But you also could identify.
We should have started an energy drink brand.
We should have, or set up distribution for Red Bull in Canada. Either one would have probably been okay.
That's good.
Amazing. Dude, thank you. By the way, Derek Height, who is one of my best friends, wanted me to say hi. I took you and Derek on the first photo shoot that launched Derek into his pro snowboard career. When we snuck out.
Mark Gallup, and I think your friend Doug Noctegal came on that trip as well. Do
you know where Doug's brother ended up for the longest time?
Sure.
Roy Noctegal was the head of design for Arc'teryx for the last many, many years. So again, he is one of my friends who became exceedingly successful out of a tiny, tiny pool of humans. We literally, there could be a case study done on a time period in Calgary out of the snow, surf, skate, mountain bike world. It's wild. It literally is wild.
Write a book on it. And a paper, write a book on it.
In all the time I have in running multiple companies and trying to talk to my friends on podcasts, so
there's ChatGPT now to help you, Jamie. So don't make excuses.
ChatGPT cleans up my copy pretty consistently because like I said, barely got through high school, so it's all good. LC, thank you so much for the time. Super appreciated. Everyone is going to find this hyper valuable, including me. So thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.